got another meeting. Figured it'd be appropriate.
I love it. I love it.
Good stuff. I actually just got my confirmation for registration for the.
Oh, good. You got the app? You downloaded the app?
No, I didn't get the app yet.
Oh, yeah, you should get the app. Yeah, the app. Yeah,
Okay.
this app. Yeah, you
Okay.
download it. Yeah. Absolutely.
Was the door open or closed?
And we're live. Go ahead.
Everybody, welcome to the first episode of a series of podcasts here in Cleveland, Ohio. We are EMP, Everyone Makes Progress. This is the HawcLand podcast. This is the CEO of the company, Anthony Hankowski. I'm Tom Richard. I'll be your moderator. And our first guest today, we have a Cleveland legend, you could call him, a Blockland man. We have Bernie Moreno in the office today. Bernie, how are you doing today?
Great. How are you?
All right, great.
Excellent.
Thanks for joining us, Bernie.
No, my pleasure.
We really want to just sit down with you, get you in here, and have a conversation with you about this whole Blockland thing. Rewinding back to what got me interested was, earlier in the year I started going to these conferences as we started this company all across the country. Silicon Valley. I was down in Miami. I was at Consensus, just all over the place. And I had this idea in my head, like, how do we get one of these things in Cleveland? Mm-hmm. And then we were asked to kind of talk at that startup scale up over there in Gordon Square back in June.
Sure. That's right. I think I ran into you there.
I ran into you there, and that was like the first time you kind of made it public.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I'm like, what is this thing? I got to figure it out, And then I'm on the Facebook page, and I'm getting involved, and we're sitting down, and we're just getting acquainted with what you started, So the first thing we kind of wanted to talk to you about was just to get an idea on where this came from. The idea, how did it start?
Sure. Yeah, so my youngest son and I always talk about, he's 20, so ever since he was 10, 12 years old, we'd take trips to California, go to car shows, things like that, so we always run crazy ideas by each other. And he came to me about 4 years ago and said, hey Dad, take all your money, invest it in Bitcoin. I'm like, what the hell is Bitcoin? So the joke, I took out my phone, called my financial guy at Bernstein and said, hey Shane, my son Kevin here says I should take all my money and invest it in Bitcoin. He goes, well, definitely don't do that. He said, but, Bernstein's been studying blockchain. You know what that is? I said, no, I never heard of that. He goes, oh, it's this really interesting technology. We should sit down and talk about it. That was 3 years ago. And so as I started to do that, saw the possibilities of this new technology really revolutionizing the way data is stored now. And my son invested in currency, I didn't. But fast forward, early this year, got together a team of people to start my own tech companies. And as you assemble all the smart people in the room, the financial guys, accounting guys, the marketing people, the tech people, etc., they were all like, okay, where do we want to do this? I thought they meant, I live in Westlake, but I work in North Olmsted, 5 minutes away. So I thought they meant like there versus Ohio City, downtown. And their perspective was Miami, Boston, Austin, Denver, LA, anywhere but Cleveland. So then the question became, well, why not Cleveland? And the answer came back from all of them. Cleveland doesn't have any of the ingredients that you need to really start a tech company and be successful long term. You'll start one here, but eventually you'll be sucked into one of these other cities. So rather than accept that, the question was, could we change the situation on the ground? Can we change the conditions in Cleveland to give an entrepreneur in the future, sitting in that same conversation, have them say, hey, you should really think about Cleveland, because Cleveland's got all the ingredients that you need to start a tech company. Especially one that has blockchain component as part of it. And that's where Blockland came from. So back in May, I got together 20 people who I thought were dramatically smarter than I am, and got them in a room, jumpstart offered their offices, sat there, kind of presented the case. Everybody said, hey, well, let's see what we can do. And I said, okay, for the next meeting, just randomly invite people that would want to be part of this thing. So then the next meeting was 50 people. And then after I said, hey, listen, we shouldn't be deciding who's who. We don't know who's what in the tech world. Open this up to everybody and have it be a coalition of the willing. So let's talk about you. We said, let's just start making announcements that we're doing this and cast a net, say who wants to be part of this effort. And that's where we are today.
So I hear all kinds of crazy numbers, Bernie, 1,200, 1,300, 1,100, I've heard 900. How many people do you think are actively participating in this right now?
Probably about 1,500. I think about 1,500 actively participating at one level or another. our most active node is the next gen node. I'm really proud of that one. Zero my idea. It wouldn't even have crossed my mind, right? But I'm in a meeting, fast forward in August, and Chantal Moody came to me, and she said, you keep talking about attracting young people to Cleveland, how to get young people to leave Silicon Valley, how to get young people to leave Boston. And I look around this room, I don't see a lot of young people. I'm like, yeah, that's a good point. I said, but it's whoever wants to be involved. She said, well, you need to make it bigger than that. You need to make it so that young people really have a place to contribute in a meaningful way. I'm like, sounds like you should be co-chair of a node we'll call Next Gen. And then Aaron Slow, I was like, yeah, I agree. I'm like, well, then you should be her co-chair. And they have 120 people. They're very active. They have a lot of meetings. They come up with a lot of really cool ideas. And that's how people have gotten involved. In the place node, which is figuring out where should this technology center be, a lot of effort and energy around that. A lot of people putting a lot of time. When you volunteer, it's a bigger stake than when you're paid to do something.
Right.
And I think the volunteer effort and the willingness part is what's really making the effort work. And then the fact that it's open to anybody who wants to contribute. So if you have an opinion, if you have advice to give, join the effort. Different than I heard 1% of it and I'm going to make some snarky comment. That's not really participation. That's just being annoying.
Right. So you brought up the place node. That was something I wanted to actually pick your brain about. That, the place node, the opportunity zones, all these different things that are going to come to light that should attract people to the city. Where's the place node at? They've decided on a destination? Or?
Yep. So they've done a lot of work. They've come up with one preferred location. So we're working that out, but the person who owns that preferred location has to agree.
Right.
And so we're getting that person there, and I think the goal is still. The conference starts Saturday. The goal is still to make that announcement a week from yesterday, so Sunday night. That this is where we're thinking. But these next 5 days, we're going to lose a little bit of sleep.
It's critical trying to make that connection.
Yeah, right? Because it's all privately funded. We're not going to the state of Ohio and say, hey, give us $200 million to do this. Because again, that takes on a different deal. When you get public funding, it's just messy, right? So private funding, nobody gets anything. When somebody say, well, I don't think it should have been there, it should have been there. Okay, well, you have $200 million. If you do, then you can put it wherever you want.
Right.
But this group came to that conclusion. I think it's the right spot. It's about having access to transit. Speaking of a car dealer, right? It's kind of funny, but public transportation is critical. Accessible public transportation is critical. We got to get the scooters back in Cleveland. That's a big priority of mine. We have to make it so that you're in a 5-minute walking distance of everything that you need. And there's not a lot of places that you can do that. And we need to be able to house a lot of people. So that you can take your company, my company, 200 other companies you've never heard of, and all of a sudden what you're doing mixes with what this other person's doing, and then you have really good ideas. That's why you need this consolidation of tech space. Because there's a lot of tech going on in Cleveland. It's just it's very spread out. So the spread out means you'll never meet somebody in Lorraine that's thinking about something that relates to what you're doing. That if you guys combine forces would actually be a better idea than individually. So that's the idea of the tech center.
Awesome. So kind of just moving along a little bit, you brought up the conference. We all know it's starting Saturday with the development days. Is there anything that maybe you could say to the people watching, maybe spark a little interest to get them there? Maybe offer a discount code or something. Is there anything we can do to maybe try to sell a couple more tickets before this thing comes around?
Yeah, absolutely. So we can get you 40% off today, Cyber Monday. So when you register, use the code Cyber Monday, we get you 40% off, which is big. So it gets you in the whole conference Sunday night all the way through Tuesday for $595, including meals, and 159 access to 159 speakers. More importantly, access to another 1,500 people that are all in your same space. So if you're an investor, developer, entrepreneur, business person, lawyer, banker, business owner, this is a place where you're all going to meet. And there's no question in my mind that as a community, Cleveland's going to be dramatically smarter a week from Wednesday than they are today about blockchain. I think you're going to see a lot of people whose light bulbs go off. Somebody asked me today whether I had anything to do with Josh Mandel doing the Bitcoin tax acceptance. I said only in the sense that I talked to Josh in July, like I did to a lot of government officials, and said, hey, here's this new technology, Ohio needs to lead. Being at the forefront's important, so people in LA, Seattle, San Francisco, Boston, New York are going, hey, what state in the country is accepting digital currency for taxes? Ohio, right? Damn, Ohio. Should have been California or Massachusetts or Washington State first. That was Ohio. We're leaders. So everybody taking their vision of it, saying this is what blockchain means, I now understand it. How do I implement it? I gentlemen today, we're talking about when they graduated from college. They graduated from college when I did in 1989. And I said, imagine if you could go back to 1989 and you knew everything that you know now back then. I mean, it'd be pretty easy to be a trillionaire. Right? I mean, you know everything. But we're at that stage now with blockchain because it's not mainstream. People aren't using 25 different applications that are built on blockchain today. Maybe using none if they don't have currency. So it's the fact that we're so early that we can claim this mantra. That's what makes it exciting. So if you're listening and you haven't registered for the conference, do that right now. BlocklandCleveland.com. You're going to register. Use the code Cyber Monday, $5.95. You're all set up. There's going to be crazy news made between Sunday night and Tuesday afternoon. I promise you that.
This is the Cleveland. This is a Cleveland conference based. It says at Huntingon Convention Center, correct?
Correct.
Downtown Cleveland. Okay. Yes. December 1st through the 4th. Like you said, over 159 speakers. We'll be hearing from about what these CEOs, all these business owners are doing to implement blockchain technology into their business model. I'm with Anthony Hankowski, CEO of Everyone Makes Progress. We're here with our guest, Bernie Moreno. This is the HawcLand podcast edition. So real quick, I want to transition back into what you said about government. So back in, this is actually October, Governor of Ohio, John Kasich, signed a bill making it legal for blockchain transactions to take place in Ohio. So with that said, what extent are you looking for government to be involved in blockchain technology once this thing really gets going on?
Yeah, so that bill was important because what SB 221 did is it clarified that a signature that uses blockchain type technology, which is cryptographic signatures, etc., is a valid signature according to the law. So before it used to be, wedding signature, notarized, etc., and then electronic signatures were legal. But it was never clarified that a cryptographic signature using blockchain was legal. So that clarification is important because imagine the three of us start a company and we're doing business here for 2 or 3 years, and somebody comes and says, all those signatures are illegal. Right. So that clarification was more about, okay, you're clarifying. That's as important as new legislation. That's what that law did. But I think, so the government's role is like that, things like that. Where can we make it easier for this technology to blossom here? How do we create a petri dish so that the government's not in our way? And then at the same time, more importantly, actually, I think the government as a consumer of the technology. So think about, when I tell people all the time when I talk about blockchain, think about all the things that are cumbersome, that require paper and verification and signatures, notaries, anything like that is where blockchain really shines. So the government is the prime candidate for a lot of that stuff. Like if I said to you right now, hey, I need a copy of your birth certificate. Where's your birth certificate?
My mom's house.
You sure? If you ask your mom for it, she's like, oh Jesus, you trip down to the basement. If you need a copy of it, is it a 2-second process? No. It's incredibly cumbersome, right? A friend of mine just moved here to run a local big company, and so moved from Indiana to here, and he had to get his driver's license, and he wanted to vote in the election. Ended up not being able to vote either in Indiana because he didn't want to drive down there on election day. Couldn't vote in Ohio because he didn't get his license. And he tells a story. He's a very good, funny storyteller. He says he went to the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, walks in, says, "Here's my deed. Shows that I bought a house, I own property in Ohio. Here's my Indiana license. Nope, that's not acceptable. What do you need?" And they give the license. So he goes back, comes back with 3 other, nope, that's not good. So he jokes he wheeled in his entire cabinet from his house. What do you need? I got milk from my mom, birth certificate, what do you got? Right? Like, because it's just crazy.
Yeah,
What are you trying to get a driver's license?
Especially the new ones, right?
Right, it shouldn't be that complicated, right? So that's a great example of how do we use technology to make it easier. How hard is it to buy this computer online? 2 seconds.
Right.
2 seconds, right? Which is why internet shopping is bloom so much. It's just people don't want friction. They want to make it easier.
So you see the government's role is essentially a catalyst for making it easy, simplifying.
Well, being a consumer. So if the government says, hey, we want to put driver's licenses on blockchain, and the two of you guys say, hey, listen, we can do that. We have an idea we can do that. You have a customer. You have a potential customer. It doesn't mean you don't have competition, and there's not going to be 20 other people that try to do the same thing, but you have a consumer. So in business, you need people. So we have a talent piece. You need money, the entrepreneurial piece, but you need that pesky customer, right? So you need somebody who's gonna buy your stuff. And if the government can be a big consumer on a city level, county level, state level, then that creates an ecosystem here in Ohio where it really takes off. So that's what the government can do. And again, stay out of the way. Like New York passed a law that says if you use blockchain in your technology, you have to register a special designation. You have to have a BIT license. Why? Like, why put one more hurdle? Imagine if you said, hey, if you use an iPhone, you have to register differently in your company. Why? Why would I have a different registration if I use one form of technology? It doesn't make sense. So it's having the government understand how to regulate and being engaged from the beginning and not later. Because the one thing about government is that they don't use a scalpel when they regulate. They use a hammer or a ball, right? But regulation really should be really targeted and scalpelized. So by them being involved early, they can understand the technology and understand where it's going, so they can put the proper guardrails on it. Because you don't want, you got to protect the consumer, and that's an important role. But you got to know what you're protecting them from and how to do it.
What type of role is Blockland playing in trying to help create some of that legislation?
Yes, we have two nodes around that. So we have the legal node that really studies it, says what are the things that we need. So when SB 221, for example, the legal node was really, really a big part of that. And then we have the political node, which is educating policymakers and then having them take the legal pieces and feeding that over to the legislator. So the Treasurer's Office would be a good example. SB 221 would be a good example. A lot of the stuff that Speaker Smith's doing is a great example. So they're out there advocating, making sure that it gets done right. I'm sure if your viewers remember the Senate Facebook hearings, right?
Right.
I mean, that's the Saturday Night Live episode. You can take those whole hearings and just put them on and go, I can't come up with anything crazier than that. So watch that. When the senator asks him, Mark Zuckerberg, if you give your product away for free, how do you make money? Do we sell ads?
Right.
Was that a trick question? Like, have you used Facebook? It's just crazy, right? But that's an example of government coming in 12 years, 13, 14 years later. Imagine if they had really been part of the effort for me, understood what does Facebook do now. And that's why I think blockchain will be the only thing that can save Facebook and Google from themselves. Because they're going to get to the point where the government's going to say, wait, Google's a monopoly. Right? Facebook's got way too much personal information. Yeah, they do. And what are they going to do? They're not going to do little tweaks. They're going to come in and blow the whole thing up and make things worse, not better.
So have you seen any signs of like the politicians in Cleveland getting on board with the Blockland initiative?
Oh yeah, without doubt, we have the most educated policymakers in Ohio around blockchain technology. They're a close second, and not just at the state level, county level, and state level. And that's all been because of these two nodes that I'm talking about. If you walk into city council in Cleveland, or walk into a random city council somewhere else, I guarantee you the city council person in Cleveland is much more aware of blockchain and what it means and how it's going to develop than anywhere else. And that's important because knowledge is where the power comes from, right? So and now we have to keep going. We're only 6 months in, but I think if you look at by Solutions 2 next year when we have our second conference, we're going to be the epicenter of people understanding what blockchain is all about, which is what will make Cleveland as relevant tech city.
You do a great job transitioning for us. We don't even have to go this. My next question was going to be, where do you see this thing going after the Solutions Conference? And you kind of touched on Solutions 2, but in between, Solutions 1 and Solutions 2, what do you see happening?
So everybody's been going crazy. Like you've been involved in nodes, you're in a blockbuster. So, and it's a volunteer effort. You do have to balance out asking people to do work for free. You recognize that people have to make money and have a life outside of this free effort. So the conference is going to end a week from tomorrow. It's the holidays. My perspective was, let's let everybody have a break. Like no meetings, no emails. Yes, we go radio silent, and then come back January 28th or 9th. I forgot the exact date. We're gonna have a big meeting, and that means what does Blockland look like in 2019? What went well? What didn't go well? How do we build on our strengths? Where's this thing go? And it's not going to be Bernie building that because that's not sustainable. It's really the coalition of the willing saying, here's where we think this thing goes. And then we know we're going to do a conference next year, so that's easy. But what are the other things that we really want out of 2019? Kind of like a startup. When you do a startup, You don't have everything. If you think you have everything figured out, that's probably when you know you're in trouble. And so we've created a lot of activity, a lot of noise, a lot of momentum, got a lot of people engaged. So at the end of January, after having a month and a half break finally, we're gonna sit down and say, okay, what do we want to do? And it's really gonna take the 1,500 or so people that are engaged and say, how much effort do you really want to put into this thing next year? Because there's some people that are probably like, I put too much of my personal time in this already. I really have to focus. And there's other people who go, hey, I get the vision, I see where this is going, I'd like to play more active role. So we got to sort all that out. But for the conference, eventually where I see that going is kind of like South by Southwest, where it's a tech conference, but it's much more. So taking Blockland Solutions, taking BizTech, taking Front, taking Kaya, and can we create a legit competitor where we have this amazing 2-week arts, science, tech immersion in Cleveland with music? I think that'd be really, really cool. Maybe we can't do that for Solutions 2, but maybe Solutions 3 looks that way.
That sounds like a good plan for the future, right?
Yeah, and it requires everybody kind of buy into it. It can't be me saying, hey, you're doing this, you're doing that. And by the way, most of these things by now are not even my ideas. I'd say 99% of it is not my ideas. 99% of it are ideas from everybody, like 2 of you guys that have been involved. Hundreds of other people have been involved. I gave you the example of the next gen node. That's how this thing really takes traction, which is great.
Right. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about was your point of view on the diversified group of people that actually got together.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I've been around to these events, and it's a common occurrence to see a white men at all of these things,
Mm-hmm.
But when I float around, like you mentioned, I'm on a couple of these different nodes. I'm going to the meetings, I'm interacting with other people in the blockchain space in Cleveland, doing other types of events that don't necessarily have to do with Blockland, but some of those people are intertwined as well. In all of these different groups, I just see all these different kinds of people, like different color, different gender, right?
Right.
Whatever you can imagine, they're there.
Yeah.
And it's kind of been shocking to me because I feel like part of what's brought this as far as it's gone in 6 months is that diversified group of people getting together.
Totally agree. And I, quite honestly, I'll tell you that we stumbled upon that. Because I said to you at the beginning, we started with saying, hey, who do I know, right? Well, I know these 20 people. And then who do they know? Then it kind of occurred to me, I said, really, if we just limit that, we're limiting ourselves because we don't know everybody. I didn't know you. I didn't know 90% of the people engaged in Blockland, 95% of the people engaged in Blockland. So when we opened up the floodgates and said, we're not smart enough to know everything, Sam Allard talked about that a little bit in the Scene magazine article. I think he got it wrong. My point that I was trying to make was wrong. It was an example of a professor when I went to college that said, if you take the smartest person in the world versus a stadium full of random people at the University of Michigan, who's going to answer a trivia contest better? Well, obviously the stadium, even though that's the smartest human being in the world. So the answer was we're much smarter as a community than we are individually, and I think that's what's made it work. I think the bulk of the really great ideas has come from not diversity necessarily of, I call it Pantones, right? Like I'm Hispanic, but maybe I'm not the right Hispanic Pantone, right? So rather not focus on that, but rather your background's totally different than mine. Your life experiences are completely different than mine. And having people in that room that come from different aspects of the world and different experiences, it's made the effort better. And people being able to say, hey, listen, just because I'm not wealthy doesn't mean I don't have incredible ideas to contribute. Because that's typically kind of been a marker. And it's spawned a few little subsets that have nothing to do with Blockland. For example, I'm on the governance committee for the Cleveland Foundation. So we decide who gets on the board. And I'm thinking to myself, part of that is you have to be able to, there's not an exact ask, but the ask is you got to be able to write a substantial check to donate to the Cleveland Foundation, because that's how it started, right? It was John D. Rockefeller, CFO. Here's, $100 million, right? So if you're a board member, the idea is there's an expectation. But so if I bring you on board and say, I need you to write a check for 50 grand, you're like, I don't have 50 grand. But it doesn't mean that you don't have $1 million worth of great ideas. So most people under the age of 35 have great ideas, but at that stage in their career, they don't have the disposable income to write a check. So that came, so I went to Ron Richard, totally agreed, said, why don't we have one of our 15 board members be somebody under 35 with no expectation of any kind of donation at all. And let's take that same model and apply it to every board in Cleveland. So Playhouse Square, Tri-C, CSU, all these boards, Red Cross, just you name it. And it's the exact same status as every other board member. So yeah, you won't get the $10,000 check, but you'll get $100 grand worth of great ideas that you would never have thought of. So that's been something that came out of that effort. So that's what's really important, and that's the part that makes me proud to see this whole effort. And we haven't been intentional. We haven't said, okay, we have 10 slots for black men under the age of 25. We have 4 slots for women. We have 2 slots for people who identify as lesbian. That's nonsense, right? What we said is, come all, come marry. And as a result, people have all come. And that's been really great. So it's about being intentional, but at the same time, not trying to be specific about how many of each kind, because then you're just trying to reverse engineer the process. And tech has not been very inclusive prior to now. Tech has been primarily young white men, because that's kind of the stereotype. When I went to college, who were the tech guys?
Yeah.
The geeky white guys. But tech's not that way anymore. Tech is everywhere. And you can't exclude parts of the population. And if you come from that perspective, by definition, when you're the one who decides who gets invited, by definition, you're excluding others. Just by, not as because you're a bad person, just by definition. Because you don't know everybody.
Yeah.
Like I said, you come to a meeting and bring 20 of your friends up. You're going to bring 20 people you know.
Yeah, you're not going to just pick up 20 random people.
Yeah, they're going to pick up 20 random people because you know, and that's limiting because what that does is it limits the audience of people that are out there. And one of the things that I've been shocked about that I never knew is there actually is a decent amount of technology going on in Cleveland. It's just it's so crazy spread out. We need to compress it, condense it, and then scale it up in an even bigger way. Because one of the things I think about is if I look at my own kids, I'm 0 for 4 in Cleveland, so all my kids have left Cleveland. But I think I get at least 3 of them back. One's a New Yorker, unfortunately, she will never leave New York. But if I think about somebody leaves San Francisco to come to Cleveland and wants to work in tech, if they're coming here to work for HawcLand, great company, but if it doesn't work out at HawcLand, not well.
Right.
It's like, not gonna move again? Nobody likes to do that. I don't know if you've ever moved. It's not fun.
Lots of times.
Yeah, it's not fun, right? It's a pain. Especially you move in different cities all over the country. It's a pain. But if they move here and hey, I can go work for HawcLand, but I know that if it doesn't work out at HawcLand, probably will. Great company. People work there a long time. But there's 75 other choices. I'm not so nervous about that. Which is why people go to San Francisco. If I go work at Facebook, I get it, Facebook. I can work at Facebook my whole life. But I can work at 500 companies with a 5-minute walk of Facebook. That would be great. So we have to create that scale here for that reason. And that's what makes a region, in my mind, that's what makes a region attractive. And I don't say this because I'm consider myself smart and thought about this, because I just listen to people who are young people and say, this is why I won't move to Cleveland. Aha. Okay, so we have to change that dynamic.
So again, great segue into my next question. These opportunity zones, these other perks, you know, like the low housing cost, right? Cost of living. What are some of the things that you can talk about that you're out trying to pitch some of these tech people in San Francisco or New York or Boston, Toronto, anywhere you might be out traveling when you're trying to spread the word about Blockland?
So the first thing we talk about is the level of sophistication of the city versus its cost. So you have all the things that a major city has: arts, the Emerald Necklace, the parks, the food scene. You have all the stuff, 3 sports teams, all the stuff that a big city has, but at a dramatically lower cost and a lot of ease. Like I came here from my office in North Homestead. That'd be the equivalent of leaving the North Shore of Boston for the South Shore of Boston. If you live in Boston, this won't make no sense if you've never been to Boston. You literally would do that once a year. Like there's one time a year you say, okay, I'm gonna leave the North Shore and go to the South Shore during the day. Otherwise, that's never gonna happen because that's a whole day. That's like a day adventure to do that. In Cleveland, you can bounce back between east, west, south, no big deal. So we talk about that. So level of sophistication, ease. Opportunity zones present something different in you. And that is that you have a lot of private money, which is a lot easier to take private money than to take public money. You have a lot of private money that has to flow somewhere. And Cleveland has an enormous amount of opportunity zones. Most of downtown Cleveland's in an opportunity zone. So investing there, if I can invest in your company and know that if I give you $1 million and then I make $100 million in 10 years, and I don't have to pay 1 cent of tax on appreciation, that's really sexy to me. We don't like, regardless of political affiliation, I can tell you one thing that business people don't like to do. Nobody, or anybody, by that matter, nobody says, yeah, I get to pay taxes today. They pay taxes, and they think that taxes should be higher or lower. I'm not talking about that. Nobody individually, nobody enjoys writing a check for taxes. Nobody. So that's a huge appeal that I can invest in your company in an opportunity zone, and that entire appreciation, if I keep the investment 10 years, is zero taxation on that is huge. 25%, right? That's what I'm saving, because that's what I would pay if I invested somewhere else. So I can invest in you in Cleveland, $1 million, or you in Boston, $1 million. But if you're both worth $100 million, $25 million taxes on your deal, zero tax on your deal. That makes you much more appealing than him, right? So that's something new that never existed before. And what that's going to do is bring a lot of diversity to tech, because these opportunity zones are typically going to be in diverse areas, and that's going to be a good thing. And that's another strength for Cleveland. So if you look, and by the way, the other one that we talk about a lot that doesn't get enough attention, in technology, you need uninterruption, right? You can't be interrupted right now. If your power goes out, your email goes out, your internet connection drops, this thing doesn't work very well. Well, forest fires, check, none of that. Tornadoes, not really. Earthquakes, no. Hurricanes, no. Right? So you look at, so somebody's making an investment in a big tech center in Houston. Chances are, it's not like you had a hurricane once and it'll happen again, right? I have a house in the Bahamas. I don't think I'm never going to have a hurricane. It's a matter of when will there be a hurricane. And every year it's like, not this year, right? But eventually it's going to happen. But you're making a long-term investment in technology, knowing that you don't have any natural disasters is a big deal. Well, also, we have cheap power. That's really, really good. We also have a very good workforce that if you give them access to good public transportation, people will work. It's just, if you build something and you build it so far away, I don't have a car. I can't get there. And if I take a bus, I have to leave at 2 in the morning. I'm going to go through 19 buses. That's not, right? I need to be able to have access to good high-paying jobs, which is where these opportunity zones will focus on downtown. We have to build a vibrant downtown. Really, really important.
So we've talked about this new technology, blockchain, right? We talked about the blockchain or Blockland initiative here in Cleveland. One thing that strikes me as a question that I constantly walk around wondering is, when we look at Cleveland on paper, over the course of the last 50, 100 years, there's three main industries in Cleveland, right? So we have manufacturing, we have healthcare, and we have finances, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do
insurance?
Yeah, finances,
Insurance,
yeah, all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So how do we convince people that are accustomed to that to get on the technology train?
Yeah, so because all those businesses are now technology companies, they just haven't realized it. So I use this example. Are you going to be like Netflix, or are you going to be like Blockbuster? Because every business has that choice. Blockbuster is a great business in 1990. It was a great business. Amazing real estate, foolproof product. People are coming to you. You can charge late fees. You controlled access. Everybody wanted your product. They're great. Why should I change? Like, why should I change? It's great. Right? That was the question they asked themselves. They said, you know what they said to themselves? We won't. So there's Netflix mailing DVDs in the mail. It's so stupid. Think about that. Like, why would somebody want a DVD the next day? They want to watch the movie today. So we offer this great real estate, candy, popcorn, and then you can get the movie today. Netflix, those idiots. They don't realize customers don't want the movie the next day. And then they could have acquired Netflix for $75 million, and Blockbuster turned them down. So now, fast forward, one is gone in the dustbin of history, and the other one is an almost $100 billion company. That's pivoted 3 times because they said, yeah, we're realizing people don't want DVDs, but they also don't want to go to a video store. Oh, streaming's coming, so we're going to be a streaming company. And then they looked at it and said, geez, if we're just a streaming company, anybody can do streaming. We're going to become a content provider because that's where the money's at, and that's what they are right now. They're the largest movie studio in the country, in the world probably. They produce I mean, when was the last time somebody said to you, hey, did you watch this on Netflix? Or I said, it isn't, did you watch it through Netflix? Did you watch it their content? And God knows what they're going to pivot to next. So here's Blockbuster, one business model dies. Here's Netflix evolving every time. So the talk with Cleveland companies, whether you're banking, insurance, manufacturing, wherever you are, what are you going to do? You better start thinking about that technology permeates everything. And the way you're going to attract people, which is the critical resource for any business, is you have to be tech relevant. Technology isn't just this dorky guy's thing anymore. Technology permeates everything. And they've got to see that. And I think they will. And that's why having that conference in Cleveland is so important to have it early, to give people a chance to say, okay, I heard this for 2 days. How does it apply to my business now? And what do I do about it going forward?
Right. So we've talked a lot about, bringing people to Cleveland, making this change in Cleveland. We just touched base on changing the economic environment. What that's going to require, in my opinion, is going to be a lot of new businesses, right? Mm-hmm. Tech businesses at that. And part of that, is the money. So when we look at the history of Cleveland and where people with the money put their money, most of that money goes to museums, mm-hmm. healthcare, mm-hmm. and nonprofits. So how do we start to convince those people, or even people outside of Cleveland, to start dumping money into technology businesses in Cleveland?
So 2 ways. Number one, opportunity zones provide that. Because by choice, if I have a cap gain, so if I made $1 million cap investment that's now worth 10, I can pay the government $2.5 million right now. Don't want to do that. Okay, what's my plan B? Skip town. That's it. Okay, plan 3. Plan 3 is take that $10 million, invest in a technology company in an opportunity zone, and know, yes, there's going to be a risk there, but am I going to lose 25% of my money? Because if I do, I'm still even. But if it works and this thing appreciates, the entire appreciation is tax-free. So that opportunity zone is that answer to that. The second one was we do have a node around that, which is this entrepreneurial node, is to make certain that the investment community in Cleveland, the wealthy people in Cleveland, the people who have money in Cleveland, if they don't understand blockchain, they won't make an investment in blockchain. Because if I come to you and you have $100 million net worth, okay, and I come to you and say, I want $1 million investment in my company, you're like, okay, because you're making 2% in the bank. I'm going to offer you a 10% return, 20% return, 30%, something gets your attention. And I talk to you about blockchain. You look at me like, I have no idea what you just talked to me about. I have no idea anything that you just said. Are you going to write me a check? No. But if I say to you, hey, invest in this office building that does this exact thing, you're like, oh, that I can wrap my head around. So part of the entrepreneurial node is making certain that our investors know what they're doing. We have one gentleman who's an investor in Cleveland, big investor, who jokes that when he was in business in Cleveland, this guy from Dallas came to him and said, hey, I got this great idea for how you can stream and do this on TV, blah, 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 blah. And the guy's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like literally, whoosh, I understood Dallas. It's the only word I heard. I understood. And the guy come down, he made an appointment to fly down to Dallas twice. And this guy's a good sales convincer. Both times, last minute, I could make it, whether my wife died, something, some BS crazy excuse, none of which are true. And finally the guy says, I'm going to get on a plane, I'm going to come see you. So yeah, okay. So now, time to see him, makes an appointment, walks in the conference room, this guy's talking about streaming, blah, 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 HD, blah, 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 blah. 5 minutes in, this guy loses attention and goes, hey, I got to go step out, I'll be right back. Goes to his guy and goes, can you just listen to this guy? I have no idea what he's saying, I got to go. Leaves the room. He was offering him half his company for $500,000. Take a guess.
Was it Netflix?
Mark Cuban.
Oh.
Yeah.
So every time Mark Cuban comes to Cleveland, calls that guy, hey, too bad you didn't invest with me. You'd be a billionaire right now. Right? So what would have changed that is if he had been educated on what this technology can do. So that's what the entrepreneur, just like educating the policymakers, educating the investors is really important too, so that they don't miss opportunities like that. That's how we can convince them.
So how do we educate the people with money in Cleveland about blockchain?
Well, things like the conference and then the meetings after the conference. So we bring investors together all the time, and we're going to have, when we build City Block, which is our tech center, we want to have investment people in that tech center, so they're seeing what's working, what's not working. People, it takes a lot to make money. So people who have a lot of money don't freely give it up.
Right.
That's usually kind of like the mantra of how somebody gets wealthy and stays wealthy is they don't freely give up their money. So you have to really make the case. And so education through conferences and events in between conferences is really important. And having them see that these things work. So having things where they see a company that started, they see it working, they see their friends making money with it, then they start to jump in.
So as we're talking about the conference as an educational tool, maybe touching base on some of those 139 speakers and maybe some of the companies, some of those companies that are associated with them that will be here in Cleveland might entice a few people to want to get there.
Yeah, so some really cool things. So we got all the big tech companies will be here. Literally every single big tech company will have representation here at one level. So number one, the CEO of Oracle has never, ever, ever spoken publicly about their blockchain initiative. We'll do that for the first time in Cleveland. The president of AT&T has never, ever spoken publicly about what they're doing with blockchain. We'll do that at the conference for the first time. We have Nick Szabo, who is, I personally think, the inventor of Bitcoin and blockchain. He won't say that, right? But he speaks publicly like once in a blue moon. He's going to be there talking about smart contracts, which is a critical aspect of blockchain that's often missed when people talk about blockchain technology. They talk about immutable, decentralized. They don't really talk about smart contracts, but that's where the magic in my mind happens. He's going to be there. We have Joe Lubin coming in from Ethereum, one of the co-founders, to talk to the developers. That's a big deal. We have an announcement from Congressman Davidson on Monday morning that's going to be earth-shattering. That's a big deal. We have John Houston, the governor, the lieutenant governor-elect on Sunday night, making a big announcement about Innovate Ohio. That's a big deal. So we have a lot of really, really great content. And as you know from being at conferences, it's not so much I sat in a room and heard a presentation, and all of a sudden I left there, you know, as knowledgeable, right? It's I met this person, and by the way, sometimes just completely by coincidence. I just happened to be in the bathroom and both washing our hands, and hey, what are you doing? Well, you're working on that? No shit. And the conversation carries, and all of a sudden 2.5 hours later, a deal struck. Somebody may run into you, see your shirt, and go, hey, what does that EMP mean? And then 5 minutes later, you've found an investor.
Yeah, that's usually how those conferences happen. You know,
That's
walking around talking to people.
Exactly, and that's where the magic happens. So it's not just about, hey, I don't do anything with blockchain. Hey, if you're an investor, you're going to be people there. If you're, first of all, 177 developers will be there. Holy crap. That's talk about how hard it would be to hire a developer. They're going to be right there. You want to run, give them, hey, this is what we're working on. Pitch your idea, pitch your case. You have a startup, and it doesn't have to be a blockchain startup, by the way. Blockchain typically is only a small part of a company's technology. So like I have 3 or 4 or 5 different things that we're going to be doing using blockchain technology, but blockchain is 20, 25%, 30% of the underlying tech. The other 70% is general technology. You have APIs, you have user interfaces. All that stuff is just regular tech. Having people be able to, that you can connect with is really, really important. That's where these tech conferences are great, especially diversity. Because I'll talk about that. We will have the most diverse tech conference ever. I'm not talking about blockchain conference, any kind of conference. We already know that because we've seen our demographics for who's attending this conference. Every company talks about, oh, we need more minorities, we need more people of color, we need more men, blah, blah. They talk about that. Okay, well, here's a conference where you have an opportunity to meet people, to hire them, give them jobs, and put your money where your mouth is. Because you can't just talk about we want diversity. Here's an opportunity to do diversity. So let's go, giddy up. So for those people, HR people, they may not know, you don't need to know anything about technology, but you know that you need people. Well, you're gonna have people who would be right for the picking come to the conference.
Right there, right. So Bernie, who's on your list at the top of speakers that you want to hear?
I think the one, well, I can't say who's my favorite because it's like having a favorite child, but I will tell you that the speakers I mentioned just now are the ones to look out for. Yeah. John Houston's gonna be great because he's gonna open up the conference, and he's gonna make people go, Ohio, right? So there's a lot. I don't want to take anything from his presentation. I love to leave it untempted, but he's gonna talk about what he's gonna do as lieutenant governor. That's gonna make Ohio the place you want to be if you're in technology. So it's not about giving $3 billion to Amazon because that's stupid, right? It's about how do you create an environment where you create a lot of startups, you create opportunity for a lot of people rather than giving one giant company that doesn't need 1 cent a ton of money. That's John. Then the second one is Nick talking about smart contracts, Nick Szabo. I think that's gonna be really cool. And Oracle and AT&T. I think they're, and IBM. IBM is gonna have a lot of cases where people go, oh, that makes sense. Like this whole romaine lettuce thing. That's not, Walmart's not having any issues with that.
Right.
Because they put all their leafy greens on blockchain months ago. Where a lot of places are, that's why they had to say we have to throw it all out, which is stupid. So I think there's gonna be some really, really good stuff there. And then Warren Davidson's announcement on Monday morning is gonna be big.
Does that have something to do with his Capitol Hill debates that he held, or?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll be in. I think that's
That'll be right up your alley.
That's what my interest lies.
That's what your interest lies. Yeah.
Yeah.
That'll be right up your alley. That's big. I mean, the big that he's announcing it here, right? The Digital Chamber of Commerce is making a big push to be here for that reason. And I think there's a lot of other really cool local people that you'll see, people that you don't realize, geez, that's a company that does things here, like SafeChain, really cool company. I mean, I call it Ohio, it's Columbus, but that's a cool one. See what Tony Franco's been up to, what CoinYinja's doing. And there's just a lot of different places that people are like, wow, there really is. I think I hope we break this, we can't do it, Cleveland kind of thing that holds us back. I think my goal is that by Wednesday morning, people go like, we can actually do this. And remember what this means is that we're sitting here 2 years from now, and you're in some random city in America, and you say, name the top 4 tech cities in America. You go.
Seattle, Cleveland.
Well, today. No, you go Seattle, San Francisco, Boston, New York.
Yeah.
Nobody would argue this one, right? And we're not going to change that. 2 years from now, nobody's going to say it's anything other than those 4 cities. But imagine a scenario where it's 5 automatically. It's San Francisco, Boston, New York, Seattle, Cleveland. Whoop! Let's argue about the other 5. That's what this is. That's when we say we're going to make this happen. That's what that is. And what that means is population growth, prosperity, great jobs, tech companies, lots of employment, lots going on in tech. And we can make that happen. And I think by Wednesday morning, people wake up and go, wow, I get it now. Because there's been so many people on the sidelines that only see little bits and pieces. I've used this analogy. Have you ever seen the show Breaking Bad?
Yeah.
You can't watch Breaking Bad and start at season 5. Because none of it makes any sense to you. You'd be like, whoa, why is this high school teacher telling that? I don't get it, right? That's kind of what Blockland's been so far. That unless you started at season 1, episode 1, and walked it through, it makes sense to you. But the conference level sets the whole region. And it's not just about Cleveland. It's about Akron, Youngstown, Northeast Ohio, and to a larger extent, Ohio, because we're all on the same team making it happen. Obviously, we want Cleveland to be much more relevant than Columbus and Cincinnati. We want all of Ohio to be big. You know, we have a lot going for us. We're an hour from New York, D.C., Chicago, 40 minutes from Toronto. We have water. We have great natural resources, the things I talked about earlier. I think people will leave there going, we can make this thing happen. And what happens is friends will talk, and we know that there's going to be a lot of people who leave those top 4 tech cities in the next 24 months because they become unlivable. I can't live there anymore. I just can't do it. My daughter lives in New York City, and as much as she loves New York, she complains about it 95% of the time. Like when she came to visit us Thanksgiving, you know what she went home with? Groceries. Like literally food. I'm like, holy shit. My 26-year-old daughter is going back home and she's taking food from me. Like, what does that tell you?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's crazy because you can't afford to live there. She pays $5,000 a month in rent for a 700 square foot apartment. That's crazy. Crazy. So those people will leave. So what they need to hear is there's opportunity in Cleveland, and we're talking about my son's friend who lives in downtown Cleveland. He pays $800 a month for an apartment. My daughter's like, you pay $800 a month for this apartment? Are you kidding me?
It's probably like 1,500 square feet too.
It's twice the size, right? And she's like, this is nuts. Oh, what am I doing? So it's not enough for her yet, but if we keep stacking up more and more and more and more reasons to come here, you'll get a critical mass, the inflection point will get there. So that's why for me, Solutions 3 is where that argument is sealed. Where it's 5, it was 5 tech cities, Cleveland's number 5, indisputably. That's by Solutions 3. So we're at Solutions 1, how do we get to Solutions 3? And that's what we have to map out as a community. So again, this is not about me at all. This is about everybody who has a voice to add, and an opinion, and advice to add to the effort is going to make it better.
So one thing that you and I have talked about a few times, Bernie, that we kind of got away from in this little sit down here, was we didn't talk about how this is more of a tech movement than it is a blockchain movement.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So you maybe want to share with anyone listening?
Yeah, because I got a lot of criticism about that at the beginning. So this isn't about saying we do blockchain and you don't. Right? And blockchain good, other tech bad. This is about technology in general. Blockchain is just what we're leading with to be a catalyst, so that when you look at the tech table that's been set, what's San Francisco great at? What's Boston great at? What's New York great at? What's Seattle great at? Every region got there through a strategic strength. The example I use with people is Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh's our number one competitor by far. Because you look at other contenders, Austin, Texas, St. Louis, Nashville, Atlanta, Miami, Baltimore. Pittsburgh is really sexy and exciting right now. They got there through autonomous driving cars and robotics. That doesn't mean that every tech company in Pittsburgh is an autonomous driving cars and robotics. That's just was their catalyst. Our catalyst is blockchain. But it's about all tech. Because like I said, not every, like if you look at Pittsburgh and say, what does this company do? Does some of their product touch autonomous driving? Maybe. But they do a lot of other tech. That's what we do here. So this is about creating a whole tech ecosystem, of which blockchain is maybe the center pole of a giant tent that does that. Like, that's what gives us that relevance in the world to do that. Like, why did Boston become a tech city? Like, why all of a sudden Boston, Massachusetts? Why? Because they were huge in the dot-com era. They had Alta Vista there, Engage, lots of companies that created a lot in the dot-com era. And yeah, sure, dot-com busted, but they kept the infrastructure in place. And that's why Boston is so important. They got a lot of companies, you got a lot of critical mass that went there. Of course, Harvard and MIT, especially MIT, helped a lot. But we have CASE. And CASE can be our catalyst going forward, which is why that research and innovation node is so important. And CASE is 100% on board. And they're doing a lot of things with HoloLens, which is this really cool technology, which indisputably CASE is a leader in. They've got a whole innovation campus and plan around that. We just plug in blockchain to that and blow the thing up and bigger and bigger and bigger. That's what it is. So, yeah, that is something that, again, people watch episode 5 of season 6 and wonder what the hell's going on. Don't like the show because you're just not understanding it. It's definitely not. It's about blockchain, but not only about blockchain
Right.
at all.
I just wanted to get that clear.
Yeah, no,
in case anyone
thank
was
you.
wondering, right?
Yeah, no.
Especially with the name being Blockland, right?
It is. And maybe it's called something else later. But Techland would have been just, people would have been like Cleveland, right?
Yeah, right.
But all of a sudden, people are paying attention to Ohio. Like, if you look at social media, even on Josh Mandel's announcement, there's people talking about that all over the country. In fact, one guy loved it today. He goes, Ohio, question mark, question mark, question mark? Changing minds, right? There's the Science Museum accepts digital currency now. There was a Russian blogger talking about the Science Museum in Cleveland. That's pretty cool, right?
Awesome.
We would never have gotten that if we say, hey, at the Science Museum, we now have iPads. Oh, wow, really cool.
Right.
Although maybe it is really cool that we have that. Or the Art Museum, which has that huge, really cool art wall. That is really, really cool, but it didn't get the kind of attention because it's not hot and new like blockchain is.
One thing, obviously us being a blockchain startup here in Cleveland, being involved in the conference, we kind of know this already, but we haven't touched this at all while we've been sitting here talking. A lot of the people watching don't know about blockchain, they don't understand it. They'd probably be surprised to understand how many companies are actually working on blockchain projects here in Cleveland. So maybe if we could talk a little bit for a few minutes about, the startup portion of the conference, so that people can get an idea of what a blockchain project is and what those types of people are working on.
Sure. So I'll quote Steve Jobs on that. People don't know what they don't know, right? So if I'd asked somebody, hey, do you want an iPhone? They would have said no, because they didn't know they needed it. So with blockchain, it's 0.001% important to understand how the technology works. What really is important is what the technology can do. So the analogy I like to give is, so I have a daughter, 25-year-old daughter, who lives in DC, another daughter, my younger daughter. And I joke that she has an idea that says she's 25, she is, but she's had that same idea for like 10 years, right? So she walks into a bar in DC, midnight, right? Nothing good happens after midnight. But she'll walk into a bar at DC at midnight on a Saturday night, and it's a nightclub. So this bouncer is this huge guy, right? Who knows what his background is? I have no idea. She's going to give him a license that tells him enormous amounts of personal information about her. Most importantly, her name and where she lives. What's to stop him from calling his buddy, saying, I got this cute girl at XYZ nightclub. I'm going to tell you when she leaves. Here's where she lives. I don't have to finish that story. Right? I guess with that, I don't want to finish that story. Why? So with blockchain, what you can do instead is she can walk into that nightclub, have a single-use barcode that scans it, and tells the bouncer the only piece of information he needs to know. She's over 21. Beep. Anything else? You didn't know my birthday? I want you to send me flowers on my birthday. I want you to know where I live. I want you to know my name. I don't want you to know how tall I am. I don't want you to know how much I weigh. I don't want any of that stuff. I want you. You're only entitled to know that one piece of information. That's something you can do on blockchain. You can take welfare payments and move that to blockchain, so that if a single mom walks into a store, then as a taxpayer, you know that the products that she can buy with that welfare card is these exact products only, and money doesn't transfer until it's 100% verified, which helps out that person, because they may make a bad decision and buy $20 worth of alcohol with a $50 gift card, which is bad for everybody engaged in that process. Right? That's what you can do with that. If I ask you where your birth certificate is because I need it, you have it right there on your phone. You own it. Passport. Have you ever traveled where you forgot your passport? I have.
That was probably fun, huh?
Not fun. I was literally walking into a flight to fly to Stuttgart in New York, and I see all these, and I changed, I put my sweats on, the whole deal, and I'm looking at the guy, and they're checking people's passports, and I'm like, Not good. So, why do you have to have this stupid little book with you?
Right.
It's annoying. It's like, it's nonsense, right? First of all, it can be forged like that, right? I mean, there are. It's not complicated, right? But imagine something that can't ever be forged, that you own, that you control. So I want to check into the Bahamas. Beep. Here you go. I checked in, and it's done. Everything. You don't have to answer all the silly questions. They know everything about you because I've shared whatever information I want. That's what you can do with blockchain. Supply chain, like we're talking about, where romaine lettuce in this one farm is bad, but the reason I had to get rid of all romaine lettuce is they have no idea where it goes from there. There's no way to track it. Blockchain can. So those are all the things that you can do that are just revolutionary that you can do with blockchain technology. I joke that it's kind of like explaining Instagram to somebody in 1970. If you were in a time machine and went back to 1970, you say, explain Instagram. There's no smartphones. There's no internet. Cameras are huge. There's Polaroid, but that's. So I say, you'd say, well, imagine your neighbor comes over to your house with a slide projector and tries to make you jealous of his life. What do we call that? Instagram. Right? Or Twitter is where you're having a random conversation with somebody, and then other people who you don't know and like start giving you their opinions. Right? That's Twitter. Right? So it's hard to explain new technology to people because I haven't used it. Until you use technology, I never ate Indian food until I was 35 years old. I love Indian food. But if somebody said, do you like Indian food? And when I was before that, I'd be like, no. Well, why not? I don't know. I just don't like it. Why not? I never tried it. But once you try it, I love Indian food. I didn't realize that was Indian food, right? My son introduced me to Korean barbecue the other day. I never eaten that in my life. And I was like, I'm like, okay, I'll try. Oh, I like Korean barbecue. But you don't know until you experience it. So for the average person, they don't need to know that it's blockchain. They just need to see that their lives are easier, faster, and better because of it.
So, Bernie, how would you recommend anyone that's listening or watching that would like to get involved in Blockland to be able to take that first step?
So go on the Facebook page, the Blockland Cleveland Facebook page. Sorry about that. Go on there. Send me an email. Send you an email. Send anybody an email who's on there that they know, and say, hey, I want to be involved in these 2 nodes, these 3 nodes, this 1 node, all 10 nodes, whatever they want to do. There are some people that are actually actively engaged in all 10 nodes.
Yeah, I see some.
Yeah,
I'm on like 4 of them.
I know, it's good because actually you get to see the whole picture. It's a lot of work though. But go on the Facebook, go on the website, blocklandcleveland.com, come to the conference, and participation doesn't have to become a full-time job. Participation can be, hey, I have a great idea around this. Here's my great idea, right? And that's a one-time thing. It can be ongoing. They can. What's great about Blockland, you can get involved at every level you want to get involved in. So you want to put in, you might get a full-time job. You get a full-time job. Nobody's gonna pay you, right? You'll get thanked a lot, but nobody's gonna pay you. So it's whatever you want to do. So that's what they can do. And I'd say that there's all kinds of things that you can do to get involved that, because we're early, pay off big dividends. Like, I think Waverly Willis will tell you that he never got as much publicity as he's gotten in the last 3 months, for sure. Urban Cuts, Google Urban Cuts now. He is dramatically more relevant on Google today than he was 3 months ago. Why? Because he asked the right question at that one meeting that we had at the Bar Association, and then started accepting digital currency, and now his business is blown up, which is great. Nobody deserves it more than he does. So when you're ever in a scenario where in tech you're early equals good, late equals bad, right? You have to be in early, and you have to have some compelling case to what you can do and be a part of it at some level or another. You can be a funder, you can be an employee, you can do a startup, do whatever you want to do. You can be a resource in your company. There's a lot of people in the Blockland effort that have become their blockchain experts at their law firm, at their bank, at their insurance company, and all of a sudden people are coming to them, hey, tell me about blockchain. They're I'm the expert, right? That's a good thing for a career, not a bad thing for a career.
So I've probably heard you say at least 100 times that this isn't about you.
Oh, Jesus.
So you might hesitate on how you're going to answer this next question I'm going to ask you, but I'm going to ask you anyways. If we fast forward like Satoshi did in 08, right now today, 10 years from now, where do you see Blockland Cleveland?
Oh, I think we'll be where we want to be much less than 10 years from now. So like I said, I think by Solutions 3, this thing just works on its own. In other words, there's nobody in Boston that says my job is to make sure Boston's a relevant tech city. It's just on its own. Everybody's doing it. They don't have meetings once a month that get together and say, hey, how do we make Boston really be this great tech city? It's autopilot from there. Same thing with New York. Same thing with San Francisco. Silicon Valley doesn't even think about that. I think what those cities have a problem is they've priced themselves out of the market. It's very expensive to do a startup there. It's very expensive to live there. And kind of the spirit of technology is always kind of like this, right? Not this sanitized. Like, you watch the show Silicon Valley?
Yeah.
Right? That says it all. Well, it says it all. Right? Because it's like Cooley, right?
Yeah.
Most tech companies are like Cooley now. You know, you look at Facebook, Amazon, Google, Apple to some extent, all of them have turned into Cooley. And if you look at the talent there, they don't want to work for Cooley. They want to work where it's this, like the energy of cool, open ideas, not some bullshit marketing stuff that, you have the marketing bike trip. It's like, they don't want that. It's all fake. You want authentic, real connections where you're really doing real things, and it's not all sanitized. And I think those cities are going to have kind of a little bit of a reckoning because of that. And that's where cities like Cleveland can really capture that. Because I think the one thing Cleveland is very authentic. That's kind of our brand. Right?
Definitely.
Yeah. So I think that's where we have a big advantage. And I think it's spreading the word. It's also, we're all disciples. Meaning, we're all evangelists, not disciples. Because disciples implies followers. We're all evangelists, meaning that when we go out there, you have friends that don't live here, right? Lots.
Sure.
So when they talk to you about Cleveland, it's funny. My son went at the University of Michigan. He had his roommates go, "Oh, you're from Cleveland? I'm sorry." But at that moment in time, you have two ways to respond. You can say, "Oh God, Cleveland sucks," or my son said, "Sorry you don't live there. Where do you live? New Jersey? Sorry for you. I live in New Jersey." Right? Cleveland, we got okay. But it planted a seed in that person's mind about Cleveland that maybe in 5 years he'll think differently. Right? That's 2.7 million people in Cleveland got to be doing that. This idea that, Cleveland sucks, the Browns are terrible, blah. Hey, we have a pretty good sports weekend.
Yeah.
Right? We have Ohio State, the Cavs, and the Browns. Boop, we're done. Right? So it's, and it shouldn't be, our fortune shouldn't be tied to whether 100 people on a football team win or lose. Or 10 people, 15 people on a basketball team win or lose. It should be tied to what we do as a region, what we're doing as a company. So we just got to get past that self-deprecating thing. If you talk to somebody in San Francisco, New York, Boston, Seattle, you know what they all have in common? They're like, yeah, pretty damn nice. Yeah, they're my brother. Yeah, why would you live there? Oh, New York. Right? So we've got to have that little bit of a little swag too as well. Cleveland's a pretty damn good city. I mean, I can live anywhere I want. I've sold 17 of my 21 dealerships. I can live anywhere I want. But I love Cleveland. I like living here. I enjoy Cleveland. this is where I want to live. And I think a lot of people who you see not Cleveland also say what I just said. Well then, but you gotta stop the knocking of the Cleveland part, because you don't know who you're gonna run into, that you've created an impression.
Right.
You wouldn't want somebody who works for you to say, oh, EMP, oh, complete sucks.
Right.
You'd fire him immediately, right? You probably
Definitely
face
have a
first. but it's the same thing, right? Oh, I was just joking. No, you made an impression
Right.
with somebody. Don't do that. And coming up to this conference, you know, we have to roll out the red carpet for all these people. We have 79 speakers coming in front of us saying, we're going to roll out the red carpet. So when people leave, and they did for the RNC, you know, forget politics. People left here at the RNC and went, wow, man, Cleveland put on an amazing conference. And even better, the Democrats went to Philadelphia. It was an abject failure. I'm not talking about the politics part.
Right.
I'm talking about the actual putting on the conference. A mess, disorganized. They had everything wrong. Cleveland was executed flawlessly. That we got to build on that kind of story from this conference.
So we don't want to take up
No,
any more of your
thank
time,
you,
Bernie.
thank
We appreciate you coming in, but is there any kind of impression you'd like to leave this this audience with?
BlocklandCleveland.com. Register for the conference. Cyber Monday.
Right here in
Do that.
one more time.
Cyber Monday. BlocklandCleveland.com. Don't miss out. You know, these things, you know, my first boss told me something. This guy never graduated from high school. He's a billionaire. And he said, I said, what's your key to success? He says, very easy. I was at the right place at the right time. I'm like, well, that kind of sucks, because what if I'm never at the right place at the right time, right? He goes, no. Everybody, literally, all of humanity, is always at the right place at the right time. Maybe for a fleeting moment, but the difference between the successful people and the unsuccessful people is the successful people recognize they're at that right place at the right time, and more importantly, have the guts to do something about it. That's what makes you successful. So for people listening, you can choose and say, oh, it's not for me, it's not important, or you can say, I'm going to take advantage of the opportunity, I'm going to make it happen, and I'm going to jump in head first. I'm going to do something about the fact that I'm at the right place at the right time, and that's what will get you success.
So you guys heard it. Bernie told you how to become a billionaire. Be at the conference,
Exactly.
take advantage of those opportunities,
Exactly.
and cash those checks.
Exactly right.
All right,
You got
thank
it.
you again. It's Anthony Hankowski, CEO of Everyone Makes Progress. I'm Tom
Hey,
Richmond.
thanks, man.
Thanks, Bernie.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
we'll see you next week.
All right, great, sir.
Thank you.